Hello. Hi, Darlene. Hi. Hi, CCM. You like the old CCM bikes from Canadian Tire? Are you from Canadian Tire? Gosh, I don't know what they stood for. And I think you told me your name, CCM, last time, but I can't remember. Um, yeah, Darlene, did you do it last year when I did it? Um, I'll wait for a few minutes and then I'll tell people a little more about the painting. It's simple. Um, oh, good, good. We did it from a photograph last time. Chris, right. That makes sense. And yeah, so we did it from a photograph and this time I'm doing it from Oh, okay. Well, I also took artist liberties or artistic license. We have a license to art, not a license to kill yet. Yet. That's what titanium white covers a lot. Um, okay, I did not just admit that on live. I could get banned from YouTube. Okay. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Sorry. Sorry for yawning. I haven't spoken to anyone in a few hours because I, kind of don't really. Well, I talk to myself too, but I think that kind of gets you yawning. And usually I sneeze as soon as I get on to. So yeah, I took artistic liberties with. I did not put the chimney in, so that's also partly why I wanted to show people going from the photograph to the thing to the painting. Um, Hopefully Rhonda will be on in a minute. She messaged me earlier. Last time I did have her as a co-host, like on a split screen kind of thing, but I am so discombobulated right now. I've been so discombobulated. Last week when we live streamed, I had just got the heat back on in my house, and like that place was still really cold, so I had heaters back on, and I don't know. I've just been so I can't follow a single focus point. So who knows what we might end up with in the end. Apologist. Yeah. So take your own artistic license. Don't trust me to lead you. I can lead you astray. One thing I did notice about this, yeah. So one thing I noticed about this one, I did. Oh, oh, again. Oh my gosh. Sorry. I'm not tired. I've got this yawning thing going. One thing I noticed what I did when I dug out this painting again, and I wanted to send it to Rhonda, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. Because, first of all, now I always say, you know what I say? It's a painting, not a photograph, right? However, the house is just so off kilter, it's leaning slightly to the left. Now, because when I'm painting, I'm not painting straight on. I'm coming in from the side. If I had like an overhead camera set up, um, I do have a thing. Maybe one day I'll do that because I did get an arm for my table to do to film with the phone, and I think my this camera will work as well because then I can kind of work flat and straight on. Um, and I always tell people, so like I do it. So sometimes you'll see me, I'll be like turning the painting this way so it's facing me because I'm coming in between the the camera and the painting. And so things tend to lean in different ways. So, and I also want people to be aware when they're painting as well, because the slightest little move, like shift from the paper, this is watercolor paper, to you is going to cause you to have issues. So sometimes when people are trying to do a straight across horizon, they end up with a angled horizon, and um, and then what happens? Like, because people tend to do this, they'll tilt their paper like that, especially when they're working flat. Sometimes an easel helps, but you don't really. Oh, hi, Rhonda. So I was just explaining that I made this crooked, and so sometimes an easel helps to keep it straight on. So what you want is this facing your body. So we tend to turn it like as we're writing a letter, and we turn it because a paintbrush feels like a pencil in our hand, and that gets everything goofy. So I was just telling people, Rhonda, that the house, I could not send you this because the house is crooked. It's leaning left, and I know your house isn't crooked. Now, I always say it's a painting, not a photograph, but it was just a bit too much for my liking. I wouldn't want to sign this and put my name on it. Now, for and I always tell people, don't be so hypercritical of yourself. However, I am a professional artist. So I do have to have some standards. And so I just couldn't do that. So, like, that's why, because I'm going in from an angle, so I'll turn it and make sure the house is straight. Plus, I took artistic license and did not put Rhonda's chimney in there. So, and I kept thinking I would go back and fix it up, and I'm just like, I can't do it. So with artists, we did. So Rhonda, last year, I can't remember what time of year. Oh, you didn't notice. um, so Rhonda last year, she lives in Georgia. And yes, she speaks like a Georgia peach. She has the lovely little accent. I love it. So I'll probably be talking with a bit of a Southern belle going on here. And I'm in Ontario, Canada, like near our nation's capital. So Rhonda is, she was, they had like record snowfall kind of thing, really crazy amount. I think it was like something like 4 to 6 inches. And this was early in the morning, like it was still kind of dark-ish. And she took this photo from the neighbor's house across the road, and or the neighbors did. In the photo itself, there's power lines and everything else. And so it's pretty big amount of snow for Georgia. Of course, it all would melt off, but not so much for here. That's just a light dusting for here. Yeah, so we've got a lot of snow. It's kind of melting off a bit here and there, but we tend to get a huge dump again in March. It's been known to like cover farm fences and everything just when you think you're getting rid of it. Yeah, so I'm in a what we call a snow belt. I get a lot of snow. I know everybody thinks all Canada gets a lot of snow, but this area gets a lot of snow. Not so much in some other areas. It really depends. And there's different types of snow. So we tend to get the heavy, packy snow that, it's like, oh, you can't shovel it. And, but you know what? It is what it is. And I'm Canadian, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. And I love the different seasons. I love the snow. The only thing I don't like is when the snow all melts and it's mucky. So sometimes that gets prolonged when you get like freeze thaw, freeze thaw. I just would rather it melt and get rid of it, once and for all. But I don't mind the snow at all. You just get used to it and get used to the cold. We tend to get a lot of fluctuations in this region as well. We're probably due north from the Seaway, from the St. Lawrence Seaway. I'm probably a good hour north of the St. Lawrence Seaway. So the Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence Seaway, they kind of have a moderating effect, but we're that far north that it's, I'm a Colt. So we're that far north that it doesn't melt off so much. So, yeah, so let me know where you're from and if you get lots of snow. And we're going to paint Rhonda's house. Now, it's a really basic palette here. There is a hint of blue. I can't remember even what blue I used with this one. I have so many blues, but I'm gonna probably use a cobalt blue. I would most likely I would use a if I'm doing it on my own, I would use a sepia. However, not everybody has a sepia in their set. Sepia is SEPIA, which is raw umber. So also raw umber, it's the color of photographs. So that was what her photograph kind of looked at, like the old photos. This is not an old photo, but it was just the lighting in the morning and everything else. And I'm not going to use I'm not going to use the paint. I didn't even wet it out of my, what do you call that? I told you I was discombobulated. Ice cube tray. Oh, gosh. Yes. So I'm not going to use that because we're going for a very, very, very limited palette. So the way you make sepia or raw umber is blue and burnt umber. So burnt umber is the brown, like pretty much almost every set. If you have a set of, 12, just simple set of 12 watercolors, you're going to get our burnt umber. Might not say burnt umber, but it's like a chocolate brown. So I'm going to use that. I like to try and use what you have at home. I'm going to use my cobalt blue, and I'm going to show you just a swatch of the sepia so you can kind of see where I'm going with that. Also, burnt sienna. So there was a little hint of reddish in the foreground, especially in the doorway. Just a hint of reddish in that brown, and maybe a little hint here and there that I saw. Sometimes I took a little artistic license to make the house stand out a bit. So this is you would use burnt sienna. However, if you do not have burnt sienna is the color of cinnamon, not the candy cinnamon hearts, but the color of cinnamon or iron oxide rust. That, like, the lid is pretty close. Sometimes, you don't, or the lid, the container. So sometimes the containers aren't perfectly matched up. Typically the inside is a little more matched up, hopefully. Because sometimes I'll get a set of paints and my yellow ochre has a very much look like the raw umber or the burnt umber. Burnt umber is when you apply heat to the minerals that make umber, which is like different, like the actual minerals that you bring out of the ground, you apply heat and it makes a difference. So see, this container is ochre on the right, and sometimes the containers are a little different, but you got to go by the label and what's inside. Typically, a decent paint will have good properties in staying with the right dye lot. A little bit of differences sometimes, especially in orange, I find. And so if you don't have that cinnamon color, just use a regular primary red. So this is just a general red. I have, this one is called, it doesn't have to be called anything, but this is called Primary Red Cadmium. It has no cadmium in it. Cadmium is a poisonous mineral, but it's like, it just is relating to that. So you'd have to get it really, really expensive to get actual cadmium in there, and it would come with warning labels. So that's my limited palette. There is no black in here. There's very little black because there's still some light. Like, this is early morning. Now, I might have used, and I can't remember, I might have used a tiny hint of black here in the shadow on the because the house sort of has a different feel to it. But there is no black. This is like dark, the dark brown mixed with a little bit of that blue. It's giving it a really deep color. Okay, so let's forget the red for now, or the sienna. Okay, so sienna or red, forget it. I'm just going to use the red so I can show people how to use it. And I'm going to bring you down to my palette. Just a paper plate, white backing so you can see the color. Otherwise, If it's see-through, you would see all this. Okay, so there's my paint. You don't need a whole heck of a lot. I tend to do this, like when I'm taking out of the tube, I kind of do that just so it gets off the edge and you don't have to get it gunked up. Because sometimes the gum arabic will make it stick. Just run it under hot water. Gum arabic is what makes it not dry out and kind of holds it together. So if you have the dry pucks, it's what holds it together. And so this is my cobalt. I'm going to keep it close because I want these things to blend. Okay, I'm not using a lot of cobalt, but cobalt is the closest one to primary blue. And like ultramarine lends itself a little bit toward purple, but it's hard to discern it completely. And then we have cobalt, and we have Prussian or phthalo blue. Lends itself like a little more to aqua, like so. Cobalt tends to be a little bit more in the middle, and you need your toilet paper handy. You need some little bits of toilet paper because we are going to use a little bit of toilet paper if your trees are a bit too dark in the background. Okay, so we're going to do some relieving of our paints. So I have a filbert and I have a big flat. The filbert's a little bit off kilter, but that's okay. It just goes back when it's wet. And I'm just going to use the big flat for now, just because almost everybody has a good 1-inch flat. These are just from Amazon. I bought a whole bunch from when I was doing watercolors because they just hold a lot of water. They might say they're for acrylics, but as long as the fiber is, it's going to fall off now. Twist that, crimp it some more, or re-glue them all. I find that I just use white glue and stick the metal back on the handle. So I'm going to get some water on here. I'm just going to throw it on. I'm going to let those colors blend. Okay. So I'm not necessarily mixing, but I'm just going to let them play together. So they're not going to 100% mix. And I will tell you what I'm grabbing. Like I'll say, okay, I'm going to go in the middle and I'm kind of grabbing a little bit of the brown. But mostly we're going to do the sky first. Mostly we are going to relieve or stay away from the heavier part of the pigment, which I might call the egg yolk. Okay, so backgrounds tend to be softer, like very soft. Okay, and we will be using some white gouache and a little bit of white watercolor. I like to show you kind of how they both work. So white gouache is always good for snow. If you're doing a snow scene and you don't have white gouache, you need white gouache because it's going to, and you know me, I love to say gouache and meniscus. So I think that was a drinking game somebody suggested. So again, we're not doing the house right now. We're going to do the sky right now. Okay. So the sky, as you can tell, is very light and very streaky across. Okay. So I've taped it down because I'm working vertical. I never tape them down when I'm working on my own. It's just a preference. Also, if you're trying to tape it to get a frame, I would suggest not doing it for that reason, because it might be a little bit off kilter and it's just not going to look right. Just get a mat. They're cheap ones. Like dollar store sells decent frames. IKEA, and they already have like a simple mat that you can actually paint a little bit. And IKEA has great frames. Like they're a little bit better quality, but they're great. And So I'm just going to, like I promised I was going to do a little color swatch to show you the difference between the sepia and the blue and black. So I have a couple of scrap bits of paper here. So I'm just going to put some sepia on my palette. It's not going to hurt anything. So you can see what it looks like. And I have a scrap piece of paper here from when we were doing lots of little things. I'm just going to get a little brush, just a little separate brush to show you. And to show you the difference here. Okay. I tend to also keep back a little cup of water because this one will end up getting dirty, and then I keep back a little cup, especially if I know I'm going to do white after, because you just want a little bit of clean water. When you're using mostly a similar color, it doesn't matter if this gets messy. Okay, so this is just a cheap brush. So where did my example go? I'm just going to wet that for a sec, just to wet a swatch and grab a little bit of that sepia that I poured out here. So you can see sepia's got that feel of that. So that would be considered raw umber, and sometimes it would be sepia or raw umber. And then I'm going to just wash that off a little. And I'm going to touch the brown and touch the blue. And just kind of go in between and see, you kind of get that feel to it, but you get different tones. I add a bit more brown, it almost gives me that same color. But I do want a little bit of a mixture of those colors. So that's why I'm not going to overblend it. Now it's going to drip on my computer. I'm going to lift this up. So you can actually see some of the blue edges here. And I could, in the photo, when we did the photo of when we were looking at the photo, I could see a little hint of that blue in there too. So that's sometimes why we don't always want to use a flat color. You want to get a lot of differences. So you see, if I lighten it up, you can see the differences a little better, but it's still got a similar feel to it. This raw umber is probably one of the ones that's going to have a little what am I saying? Raw umber tends to look different. Like sometimes different dye lots will look ever so slightly different. I buy my acrylic paint by the gallon, and when I open up the new gallon, it always looks a little bit different from my other one because it's a mixture of all the colors. So is burnt umber, which is more like chocolate. So yeah, so you see, I didn't mix these. I just let them swirl. There was my little swatch of raw umber. So not a big deal. I'm just going to wash that brush and put it away. I have no idea what this brush is. People give me brushes too sometimes if they're getting rid of stuff. Okay. All right, let's rock and roll. So we're going to do our horizon line is halfway. Use your shoulder to do your horizon line. And we're going to turn this on its side. Okay, because I want the streaks to go side to side, but I want it soft. So you're going to end up with, so you can see those streaks in the background. So I want the water to pour off, because the tendency that most people have is to almost overdo the pigment right away. My water's getting murky. That's fine. In fact, you don't want to work with clean water at this stage. Okay, so there is, I'm going to just give you a quick horizon line, and you don't need to see this from space. It doesn't need to be perfectly flat, okay? Because there's a bit of snow, there's trees, everything else. It's all So I just picked up kind of like whatever was in the middle there, and use your shoulder instead of your arm, your elbow, because your elbow, I'm pretty sure from this area of Georgia, you can't see the curvature of the earth. So use your elbow, you're going to do this. You're going to be like windshield wiper. Use your shoulder as this. Okay, even just for doing quick guidelines. Again, don't need to see this from space. Only you need to see those guidelines. It's just so you know where you're going. I'm going to put a piece of paper towel underneath because I know I'm going to get messy. And I'm going to bring the computer back a bit so you can see the whole thing. That's pretty much it from top to bottom. I mean, you don't have to, you kind of have to see the top a little bit. Okay, there we go. So I'm working here. This is that's my top end. Okay, I'm going to use using this nice big brush. Going to get some streaks of water starting. It doesn't have to be 100% covered right now. Not looking for anything amazing. Make sure you go right to the edge. When I say people like to start at the top, people start here. This is the top, okay? So Mother Nature doesn't cut her sky off an inch in, okay? Now, I'm going to use my brush the thin way, so I'm going to go up and down this way. Because I want it streaky, that's what I like about sometimes a nice thin brush. Even though this is big, it still goes pretty thin. I'm going to touch into more of the brown, but I'm not going to go near the heavy part of the egg yolk. I'm not going to stir it around too much. I'm going to do some streaks of brown the thin way, starting from the top. Streaks of brown and streaks of blue. If you did blue first, don't worry about it. I'm not trying to go in between. I'm not trying to go anywhere specifically with these blue. Okay, make sure you get right to the top. Okay, people forget their edges. Not too worried about the bottom right now, because what I'm going to do, this sky is a lot lighter than this, because especially with the snow, it's early morning snow. I am grabbing water now. Water. So look at me. Water. Water, let it drip. Water, water, water. I'm going to kind of pull back up. Water. Go right to that horizon line. And I'm going to slightly guide the water sometimes because maybe it doesn't want to go where I want it to go. It'll follow where the wet was, where it was wet. If there was a slightly dry bit, it might not go there. And the water is going to give you that softness through the sky. The trouble with this technique, and it's not really a trouble, it's just that some people end up with a little bit of trouble that way, is they end up losing their pigment here at the top. That's why I said the top was important, which is actually the left side. So, because all the pigment is rolling down with the water. Okay, so what I want to do is turn it back the other way and let it play that way. There's not a lot of pigment in here, and I'm going to just add a bit of pigment there, near here. And because it's really wet now, I don't need to add too much more water. Just here and there, and now I'm just operating with the corner of my brush right here. I'm just using that, just kind of pulling through. I dip either in blue or brown interchangeably. The waterier part of my blue-brown, bringing it right down here. Wherever it looks a little bit dark or a little bit too brown, touch water there. And the water is going to carry the pigment. The pigment's like little particles. And the water is going to carry it down and right into your paper towel. That's why I put a paper towel there. And there we go. Beauty. There's a spot here that is dry. So I'm just going to go over with a little water, and then the pigment's going to kind of close in on it. So simple. So simple. And it's actually really soft and elegant. This is a great way to do skies. Turn it on its side, because skies you don't want dark unless it's a dark stormy sky, but even still the land is darker than the sky. Okay. And see, a lot of the, like, not a lot of pigment came off on my paper towel. That top one was for something else that I was using, but not a lot of pigment came off on my paper towel because I didn't use a lot of pigment. Okay, and you can dry your paper towel out and use it again. That's fine. Sometimes you'll get a little edge. Now I'm going to turn it this way, and it's going to start to drip this way, which is great. It's just going to soften different ways. Skies are great with watercolors. I'm going to dry this brush, and there's a little speck that needed to be wet there. Otherwise it would have dried funny. And so I'm drying my brush. Anywhere where it's really starting to drip, I'm going to take and just sort of and dry. The brush is absorbing any excess water without overdoing it. I don't want to take my paper towel to it, because my paper towel will absorb all that pigment. Okay, we just spent, and you know, we had a nice time. Don't want to ruin it. There. I do want a little bit deeper pigment near the top, near here, which is going to come forward. I'm not going to turn it on its side anymore. I do want a bit of a deeper pigment before it dries. That's what I need to do. I double dipped. So right near the top, I double dipped in the waterier blue and the waterier brown, just right along the top. Not trying to do a row, just kind of tapping and then drying it, taking away, drying a little, just so that it's not going to, it'll actually do something called cauliflower, which sometimes looks nice in the sky too. So anyway, all right. I'm not going to do the foreground right now. I'm just, because I want to do that. I don't know, the way the landscape is with the house pretty much sits barely in front here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the basic outline of the house. Then we're going to do the back foliage. So even though this is Georgia, there's not a lot of leaves on it. These are still deciduous trees that are losing their leaves. Here on the left, Rhonda will be able to tell you what tree this is, or shrub. From Georgia, I think this might be 2 shrubs. And I think one's a pecan. 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 If you're classy, you say pecan. If you're from the South, you say pecan. I wish to partake of your pecan pie. Just like, what's his name? When Harry Met Sally. So we're going to do the basic outline of the house. You don't want to overdo this, okay? Because the basic outline is just a few little brush strokes. Again, I don't want to see this from space, because I also want to keep the roof white. Okay? White-ish. It's not 100% white. And the colors and everything, it's just, and we can use gouache to go over it, but I just want to know, I don't want to overdo these background trees. So we get the outline-ish of the house. Then we do the background trees. And notice way in the background, I'm going to get my pencil pointer here, which is covered in paint. It's no longer a pencil anymore. These background trees look like kind of softer in color. The more you come into the foreground, like here, they're bolder in color. So there's ways of doing that, and that's when we're going to use a little bit of the toilet paper. Okay. So I'm going to every once in a while not go crooked with the house. So make sure when you're doing straight up lines that you're not turning, because people tend to work when they're flat like a pencil. Make sure this is flush to you on the table because you're working flat. And I'm going to show you with a Sharpie and a scrap piece of paper what the house looks like and what basic outline you're going to do. Then we're going to do it together on here, okay? And it's not 100% dead center. So the picture and you don't always want to set everything center. This side is about center. So everybody always, like, when I'm doing the example, like, yes, but where do we put it? I will do the example and then we do it together here, okay? So I'm going to use a big Sharpie, do the example of the main part of the house. Okay, so we don't need to do the door. We don't need to do details. I just want the roof and the walls a little bit. It's pretty much straight on. So perspective wise, we don't have to worry about perspective. So we have the peak. Okay. Resist closing off that peak. It is not closed off. Sometimes people want to close that off. I don't know why. When I do barns and stuff like that, it's like, no, don't close it off. Then this comes down about this same length. So just eyeball it. Eyeball is a technical term. About that same distance. Same distance, okay? Then the roof, then this side comes down a little bit more. There's actually a chimney in there, but I didn't do the chimney when we did it online because I was working right from the photograph. Then the roof comes out. And let's just put this roof, this part, on a slight angle. Mostly it's straight on, so it's not too angled. And it comes slightly below that peak. This one comes out, even though this is slanted, it comes out the same part here. Okay. And it's about like that. So if you did slant this, you're going to slant that parallel. This is the symbol for parallel. Okay, so it's not going inward, but it's ever so slight. It's so slight, like we can't really see this side. And then the, oops, I went a little bit not far enough over here. And then here. And that's it. Don't close off there. You could do a dotted line, but because we want to do the drifting snow, so you could just do a dotted line there. Because if you do that, you're gonna need a lot of gouache to cover that. Now, gouache will cover a lot, but okay. So, center. I'm gonna bring this a little more forward. Okay, so I'm gonna do it a little bit darker. You don't need to. Okay, what brush am I gonna use? I'm gonna use a 10. I typically like to use a 10. I find it's great for a lot of things. 10 round. Okay, I generally don't use much smaller than that for watercolor. And it does great for the trees, everything. The 12 is a little bigger, but every single brand has different standards. You get a 12 in one brand, it's going to look like a 14 in another one. Again, not a lot of standardization in art supplies, and I always say, you know what I always say, if they had a standard for art supplies, we would have peace in the world. Okay, so I'm not really going to overly wet this because I don't want a lot of wet going on, but it will get wet from when I'm dipping in the waterier part of the paint. Okay, so I'm going to locate center roughly. So center right about here. Okay, and I know it's on an angle now, so I need to make it look at me so I can get it straight. Okay, so I'm going to go about there. Okay. So that's about an inch, depending on your paper. If you had a huge paper, which I highly doubt you do, you would go smaller. Okay. So I have, now you don't even need to do it like that dark. I've got it pretty dark, but you don't need to. I've got good gouache to cover it. Okay. So then about an inch and a half wide over here. So about an inch and a half, it goes up, but it doesn't quite go up all the way because that little side of the roof comes down more. So then about this same height is the peak. So there we go. And oops. There we go. And then we go across about an inch and a half. Okay. I'm going to go a little bit darker so you can see really well. You stay light. I don't want to see this from space. Okay. And then this comes down about like maybe a bit over here. I can kind of fix that. Then the roof, then the other side comes out a bit, comes down here. And see, even if I'm kind of sketchy like that, it's fine. Again, this is a photograph, or not a photograph, it is a painting. So just ever so slightly below that peak comes the roof. Ever so slight angle this way. And the roof really should not be dark at all. As light as you can get it. Okay? And here. So right here, even though you might see a side of that house, over here, we're going to have a lot of shrubs and bushes. So we're not going to operate on the house yet. We just want a guideline where that house is. I might even bring the peak down, like the roof, the whiter part of the roof down a bit more. And it ever so slightly overhangs over here. Roofs do that. Ever so slightly. You can do that with the white gouache after as well. Okay. So ignore the, so the background trees, there's a lot of them. And I've done different brush strokes, very messy brush strokes to depict them. So like shrubs, we're not going to do this one and this one go after we've done the house. Okay. After we've done the house, we do this one and this one. And then we have like these pale trees here and lots of pale trees here. Now, because this is just a painting, and then these very messy trees here, they are probably, I think, like the pine trees. So they are very dense, a lot more dense than these. These are deciduous trees which have leaves. These have needles. I'm pretty sure of that. Rhonda did say there were pines there. So you see how they're very messy? And all pines are different. All pine trees are different. So they're very messy. We're going to use the same 10 brush to do them. But I'm going to concentrate over here and show you these ones. Notice how these aren't like a T. They come out like the little Y's and things like that. And if the branch doesn't meet, don't worry about it. The eye does the blending from back here, and it looks like a nice tree. Okay, but right now we're going to do the short ones in the back that are less visible, and they're faded. Everything at the back is more faded. Okay, always more faded. And that's why you want to use your toilet paper if you are heavy with the pigment. So if you're heavy with the pigment, get some toilet paper. I did mention in the beginning to have toilet paper handy. So you're going to use a little tiny bit of TP. Okay, like tiny bits of TP. have those. You don't have to have them that handy. It's not an emergency. Not a toilet, not a TP emergency. However, the last thing you want to do, and as soon as I say touch it with the TP, people wad up the TP and touch it, and that takes all the pigment away, especially when it's wet, because TP is really absorbent. Don't do that, okay? What we're going to do, and I'll show you a quick example. I always show examples. I'm going to make sure I'll overload the pigment here. I'm going into the, oh shoot, I got my toilet paper. I got my toilet paper in my palette and it started absorbing really quickly like I promised. As promised. Okay. So I have a fairly waterier. I did not dip in the yolk, when I call it the yolk, like the heavy part that I put in there, because I didn't stir it. And relax your grip on your brush. I know I am holding it further away so that you can see and my hand's not in the way. However, I also want you to relax your grip so it's not, you're not here. Okay, relax your grip. Just have your brush kind of pointed upward, your handle pointed upward a little bit with a pointy brush, and you see you're just kind of pulling up with these shrubs. Some of them are going, there's a lot of shrubbery. They're moving into each other. That's looking a little too blue. So what I'm doing is I'm just re-dipping, and you're going right below the horizon line. Okay. Then you're going to take that little bit of TP, the little tiny bit, and you're just going to lay it on, and it's going to take away, like, oh, so I just laid it on, tap it a little, and you see it takes away excess pigment. But it doesn't take away the whole thing. If we were to wad it up, it would be awful. So I'll show you again. I'll show you just one brush stroke. Okay, so let's say I have this. Like, I'll show you a big one, a thick one. And it's going to drip a little because it's waterier. And I just lay that down and just kind of tap with my fingernail, and away you go. Now I see exactly where I tapped with my fingernail it did that, so I can just take it and go a little bit more. But I don't wad it up. I just kind of leave it float. You see how it goes nice and pale again. Okay? So if you're too heavy-handed with the pigment, people have a hard time balancing the light and the dark. It's going to help that our paper is damp as well. Okay? So over here, all of these things, some of them are going to go up beyond the house a little bit. Make sure you go, it lessens over here. So I'll show you from the side. So I'm double dipping in my waterier, and I'll turn this to the side. So you see my brush is kind of about a 45-degree angle, and I'm pulling up. There's a lot of water on here. I don't want it to drip. So I'm going to touch my metal with that, and I'm going to pull up. See, and see, I'm making little Y's, but it's very wiggly. Like, these are wiggly. So that's also another reason you want to go right up next to that house, and you're always starting from down here. You can thicken them a little bit, like pull down, and it's always dense near the horizon. Okay, as I go, I'm losing pigment, so that's great. There's a lot of these shrubs. I think Rhonda said that she got some of them cleared out in the spring. But you see how I'm losing my pigment? That's great also for ghost trees, you know, because it's just getting less and less on the brush, but there was enough water to keep it going. Now, I didn't need to use my toilet paper on this because I just let that happen. And I might take a little, oh shoot, I put my toilet paper landed in my palette again and it dried up. everything. I need to add more water. I'm very messy, as you can tell. So everything goes everywhere. But I'm also, there's not a lot of space in between the camera and my paper. So, yeah. So I might want to take a little bit more dense pigment. So I'm going to barely touch that yolk. And I'm going to make sure that it's a little bit deeper, barely touching the yolk, a little bit deeper close to the horizon. That's typically where there's more shrubs, right up to that house. Okay. Further in the back, now there's some that are coming up from over the roof here. And so literally with your brush, touch the roof and come up and just kind of wiggle your brush a little. Just wiggle it because we're just going to catch the tops of those old shrubs. It's a little too wet, so I'm going to touch the metal of my brush and catch the drips. It's a little bit too blue, so I'm just adding a little bit of brown. And then this over here went a little bit higher in the picture. And I'm just wiggling my brush so it looks natural. And then I'm going to do that slightly bigger tree that's really close to the house. It might come a little bit further down here. It might start here, but it's just ever so slightly off to the side. Okay, so it's starting right here where I put that dot. A little bit deeper pigment. It's not much, but perspective-wise. So I'm going to go into the creamier bit of the pigment. Still, so what I'm doing, I'm going to show you with my brush. I'm just kind of wiggling my brush kind of in between, not overly stirring or anything like that. Just kind of wiggling it and letting it kind of play there. And now the pigment's going to be bolder. I'm going to go up about a 45-degree angle. I find it's the point of your brush with these round brushes, it's nicer to have the point lead. So if you're going to move to the right, point goes to the right. It stops you from doing this. So if you're trying to pull up and you're using it like a pencil, you're going to do that and get these thick things. Or if you're doing this and then you want to turn, you're going to get a thick thing. So always sort of turn your whole brush. You can see my whole hand is kind of turning. And you're going to get that fine line. Now I got to reload my pigment here, going in between. So, and let's see, I'm going to go up and getting some of that brownish color. And I'm going to start. So now these are going a lot higher than. And all the branches, there's tons and tons of little branches. And they wiggle. Now, if some of those branches got really thick, if you just take some more branches and cross them over, having them go over top. And there's a lot of branches on these. I think these are the pecans. I think. Gosh, I can't remember. Rhonda knows. Okay. Yeah, Rhonda's giving you guys an explanation as you go. I can't always pay attention to that. So it's always thicker near here, right? And these are going to blend in with the other ones too. This one over here is a little bit less dense in it. And I'm going to pull back down to make it thicker and put a bit more pressure on my brush to make the painting a bit thicker. And then we're going to go up a little and just kind of wiggling so you can kind of see just barely the tip is touching to get those fine lines. And there might be a little something there. And then once the foliage is out, it's gonna, they're really gonna be full trees, right? Because it is kind of south, so they're gonna have lots of good foliage. And they don't have to match exact. Okay. And then there were some sort of dense shrubs kind of in the center, like a little bit denser in color, kind of like maybe I'm just going to bring a little brown into my blue and kind of wiggling my brush there. That's it. Like, don't overdo any of this stuff. Okay. And now we're going to concentrate on these. Rhonda just said they're pine trees. We're going to do this tree, the edge of this tree coming in at the very end. There's a tree branch coming in off the side. That's very much in the foreground. That's why it's so big. I'm just going to bring my camera up and over to show you. See, that's coming in. Very much coming in from the foreground. That's why it's so big. I just like the way it finished the painting too, so I didn't want to leave that one out. That one goes after. Foreground is up top and bottom. So that one is so big, it's obviously originating from the foreground, probably close to the road. I can usually tell, and Rhonda usually backs me up. Yeah, you will have to send a summer picture, Rhonda. Okay, so I'm going to switch this around a bit. And so these are very dense. So trying to not fill in everything and not really looking for a trunk. Okay, so not looking for a trunk. This is a different tree entirely, this one. Okay, this is a different tree entirely. We do these background ones. And notice how scribbly they are. And they're really dense. So pine trees are very dense and they're very scribbly like that. So this brush, practice your wiggling. If you are painting flat, just do this. Hold your brush back here. Just barely touch the tip. And I just need more paint because I sopped up a lot of that paint with that toilet paper. It kept falling in there. It was wafting in more than anything. So funny. Okay, I just added some water to it. Okay. So let the brush just do its own thing. So I'm going to get a fairly dense paint on here, like fairly dense. So kind of creamy, but really I kind of rolled my brush around in that a little bit. I don't want excess water. If I have excess water, the second I touch, it's all going to rush down. So I always check the ferrule a little bit. I check to make sure if I hold it horizontal and I do that, it'll take off excess. Okay, so I'm just going to show you flat. So this is how you're going to do it. You're going to just let the brush wiggle. You're going to hold it like this and let it wiggle. And it's going to do that. So barely touching with going out different ways. Okay. And that's kind of the way it looks. And it actually kind of looks like that in the picture. So we're not always trying to paint every little branch. Okay. So it's like scribbles. So these are scribbles going all different ways. I'll show you upright and I'll go slow. Okay. So it's like scribbling and kind of curling. So it's like these kind of scribbles, but all connected. It's not swirling like that. It's kind of, going back and forth and, but kind of over top of each other. And I'll bring it to you closer. Okay. And that's going to look like that. And as your paint lessens on your brush, you know, you're going to get lighter and darker bits. So there was one kind of behind the house. Maybe it starts down here. It's typically dense down here. So I'm just going to wiggle and squiggle right up to that house, right up to the house, wiggling and squiggling, kind of coming up, not too straight. It's very dense. You can still see sky through it, but it's still very dense and very dense near the horizon. Okay, as we go up, we kind of skim the roof. We don't want to leave space there because that would look weird. Mother Nature doesn't leave a space between her roof and her background. More paint. And then we come up, and this one goes pretty high. It kind of almost touches the top of our painting. Okay, I'm going to move off to the side a little so you can see what I'm doing a little better. So it kind of goes off in front, and it's very dense. I'm going to get a bit more pigment. And there we go. So this is taking artistic license as well, okay? So it might go up and over a little bit over here. So it's not always like a, I don't know, like a lollipop or a pine cone or something like that. It kind of has a pine cone feel because it's spiky, but it is a pine tree. So yes, it's spiky. And I just picked up more pigment. There was a little extra blue in there, and that's okay. So a little bit over here, as you come outward, you see a bit more sky through it. Okay. But in the center of our tree, we see it's very dense. And then this one kind of comes a bit more like halfway up and then kind of curves into here. Okay, so that's our guideline. This is our guideline for our wiggles. And right off the page, don't forget that. People forget that. So squiggle right off the page. And very dense near the base. I might leave a little bit like close to here for my gouache, so my gouache doesn't have to work too hard. And I'm going to get some more paint. It needs a bit more water because it's not flowing, but I'm touching the water. That's the waterier part of the paint as opposed to getting more water. So I'm not looking for it too wet at this stage. Really wiggly, wiggly, squiggly. And here we go. And this did kind of meet in the middle a little bit. So we just kind of squiggle some more. Very dense down here. And then there was this big tree kind of coming up here. I think Rhonda said she took that tree out. I'm going to just put a bit more pressure on my brush to make it thicker. And there we go. Maybe a few little branches kind of coming off there. I'm not trying to do much of anything with that tree. And so that's it for the back foliage. It's already starting to look like a painting, right? Now we're going to do the house. We're going to leave I'm just going to take a quick look at this. Okay. I believe I might have put a little bit of black in under the roof. It gave it a bit of a different feel to the painting. So I might do that. Like, see where the shadows are under the roof? I think I did that. Yeah. And so I will get out a little bit of black. And when I get out when I do the, I'm not really going to do much with the red yet of the, like for the door and a little bit of the, I did put a little hint of red in the other parts of the house, just to kind of get it to stand out a little more. just to make it look a little bit different than the rest of it. Okay. And like the cinnamon, that's what I mean. The cinnamony color. So if maybe the light sometimes doesn't work that way. So you can kind of see where I put, there you go. Kind of see where I sort of added a little bit on the lower parts of that door or of the thing. So the doorway of her house I like the arch now. The door, there's an arch. It's kind of like a vestibule. So like a foyer would be inside. So this is recessed. There's actually, in the photo, there's a bright light on. So it's kind of like, not really like a porch per se. I mean, kind of maybe a porch, but like a vestibule. So that's why I left it fairly whitish. So there's an arch and then there's the door. So the arch goes nice and high. So I guess like a more of a vestibule kind of where the door is set in. So the door from the perspective is slightly to the left. It's not centered in that archway. It's just from the perspective of the way that the photo was taken. Okay. So the arch goes up almost to the roof peak here. So about here, okay? So the arch goes up. Just gonna get it from backing here. Goes up and straight down. I did it crooked. Okay, so straight down. But the doorway is slightly to the left. The actual part of the door is ever so slightly left. I'll fill in the door. It's just the perspective. It's not the way the door actually is. If you walk right up to the door, it'd be centered. You see, it's just the perspective. So we're going to leave it a little bit on the white side, but still put a little bit of shadow in underneath. Okay. Leaving the roof right now. We're going to get out our gouache after. And I actually have some of my gouache that I have kind of, I did try to soften some of it. So some of it I will get fresh gouache, because when I do the snow on this thing, I'm going to get fresh gouache. So you can see there's my wad of gouache, and then I put water in there. Just going to let it soak. Because I might use just the waterier gouache in the landscape. I always save everything. It takes a little longer to rejuvenate gouache than it does to do the other stuff, because it's got that talc in it. And now my roof is a little crooked, but the gouache is going to cover that, and it's going to cover my outline as well. I don't want to see that outline, but right now I'm just going to work on the front part of the house. Okay. So I'm going to get out my tiny bit of black. Oh my gosh. I hate working with too much black, because it takes away the light. But for this, I'm going to do it a tiny bit, and I'm going to kind of keep it off to the side of my paint. Okay. I'm going to kind of keep it a bit further away. So there's my speck of black. Doesn't matter if a little bit of it touches, but I just don't want it to over touch. And because and then I can also use some of this waterier gouache with the black to make it a bit more gray. And the waterier gouache is kind of like white watercolor, which is fine. Okay, so let's fill in. I'm going to use more of the brownish, and I did say I was going to use the cadmium red for with the brownish color. So I'm just going to put that off to the right side of my, so this is like a primary red. So I just kind of put that to the right side of my brown, and I'm just going to double dip in there. Okay. So I want to get my guidelines here, and I do want it straight this time. I'm actually going to turn it to me. Sorry, I already showed you the outline, because when I'm doing this, it's almost like also dog tracking too. I tend to kind of get my perspective off kilter. So I'm going to turn, I'm going to sit down, sit and steady my hand. Oh, 70 degrees and daffodils. Oh my gosh. Hurricane Helene made all of us afraid of the trees in our houses. Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, you had to take them down. The daffodils. My basset hound was named Daffodil. Daffodil, she's so pretty. Oh gosh. Okay. Okay, so I'm still working with the 10, and I did say I want to get that outline of the door. So I'm actually going to use the brownish. I'm going to turn it to me, sorry. And I am going to just look at this for a second. And okay, so the peak is sort of the center of that. I'm going to dip in the brown and the red kind of interchangeably here. And I'm not really stirring them. Whoops. I don't know what I just did there. I don't know what I did with a whoops. So the center of the arch is kind of in the center of, and if I do eventually send this to you, I will put the chimney in. Okay, so that's a little better than the other one. And then, of course, the doorway is a little bit less. It's slightly to the left and a bit smaller. Okay. I know, a little finicky. Sorry I had to do that, because otherwise I wasn't going to go straight. And I am going to fill that in just with what's on my brush. Just going to fill it in. So it's gone like a little cinnamon color, and sometimes it looks a little redder. And there we go. And don't worry that the sides aren't smooth or anything like that, as long as it's fairly straight up and down. And then I'm going to take the tiniest, without washing my brush, the tiniest bit of black, and kind of go in under the arch of the door, just to kind of like where the door is, just tapping a little black and kind of pulling. So it's just this kind of movement. I'm just pulling. It's a small movement, but I'm pulling. And just to kind of give a shadow in that door. Okay? Because it's in a vestibule, even with the light on, it's got a bit of a shadow. And I can kind of pull it down. I'm not worried about the bottom so much, because there's going to be snow there. And this is pretty dark. I do want, because I had shadows, I want to get it light as well. So I actually am going to use some of that watery gouache, or you can use white watercolor. But if you've just put some white, like if you've, oh shoot, I put my, oh my gosh, I spilled the white gouache. It's so messy. So I'm just going to put some of, like, I'm just going to kind of scoop it out. It's a little thicker, and put it on my palette near, like, just kind of leave it there. I had it behind me, and then I put it behind, I had it behind me so I wouldn't ruin it, and then I put it behind my painting, which of course I'm moving my painting around. Silly. Just gonna wash the gouache off that. Sometimes the gouache will really stick in your brush if you forget to wash them. If I forget to wash my brushes after watercolor, I'm fine. I'm just like, but if I forget to wash them with the gouache, it kind of sticks in because it's a lot of talc and it's thicker. Okay, so I still got my 10, and I'm going to go with the more browner color. Oops, no, I said I was going to take a little bit of that white gouache and take a little bit of the waterier gouache and just kind of, I'm going to use my finger. I'm going to touch that and just kind of get a little highlights in the door so that it's not so flat. Okay. And then I might take a little bit of that white gouache, like maybe there's a little bit of the faint kind of coloring of the door kind of in the vestibule. So I'm going to use that watered down gouache and kind of go around the door. So see, and then I'm going to use some of the heavy gouache. I'm going to just wipe that brush off. I'm going to dig into the heavier part of the gouache in my thing here, and I'm going to take a little bit more, like right here on the dry. You can see on the dry one. See how it's really a bit brighter on that side? So I'm going to take that and put it there on that side of, like a little bit brighter. And I can take, without washing my brush, take a little bit of the gray and go in under that vestibule and create a tiny hint of a shadow up there. Kind of even removing it with my finger a little bit as well. A little bit of whiter on this side. And then I'm going to take the brown and like mostly the brown, and I'm going to kind of fill in the rest. I've got a tiny bit of black on my brush. It's not hurting anything. Just going to kind of fill in that peak. I'm going to do the peak first. Just filling it in. Going right around that. And I'm not finishing off the bottom so much. You see how I'm just leaving the bottom? Because there's going to be snowdrifts there. A lot of snowdrifts. She must have gone out in the back and then took a picture. Maybe she did go out the front, but I put snowdrifts there. That was my artistic license. And I want to take a little hint of that red without washing my brush. Okay. And I want to go like closer to the door with that. I'm going to pull down. Notice my handle is downward. I'm also trying to keep, and then I'm going to go over here with a little bit of that reddish brownish color, and maybe a little bit here. And maybe even a little over here. And then I'm going to take a tiny hint of black and go under the peak of the roof right here, because you can actually see it on the dry one. Sometimes watercolors look weird when they're wet, but when they're dry. So I'm just taking the tiniest hint of black, kind of going under the roof, especially over here. It might be a bit more shadowier on one side. And I'm just letting that shadow kind of blend in. Okay. Then I'm going to take a little bit of the white gouache without cleaning my brush. I don't care if there's a little gray on it. Just kind of let some of that blend in there into that gray and use my finger as well. I like to finger paint a little bit sometimes when I want to give a bit of a blend, because sometimes the brush is too much. And I'm going to bring a bit more shadow on this side of the door of the house. Just of the house. On the house, not the door. Okay? It's a little bit awkward. I'm going to just look at it for a second from my perspective, because from the side, like I said, I have a hard time. So and if the bottom kind of blends in with everything, that's okay, because it's the bottom, and we'll put some snow in front. Okay. So there's a big picture window here. So we want to use, we're going to go with a brownish beige. So we have white gouache on there. So I'm going to give it a bit of an outline. Then I'm going to fill in the house part, and right up to that roof. Okay. And leaving the bottom kind of wavy for the snowdrifts. Going right up to that shrub, all those shrubs. Okay. All the shrubs, and the watery or white gouache. Also kind of like in there too, to not have it so flat looking. And that tiny hint of black under the snow. So snow will create a shadow too. With the snow on the roof will create a shadow. And it doesn't have to be straight, because the snow isn't always straight. That's too much black. I'm actually going to use my finger. I like to finger paint with watercolors. It makes it soft and subtle. And maybe a little bit of black going over here as a shadow, not an outline. We don't outline houses. Kids do that. We don't. And a little bit of shadow over here. And a little shadow under the window. And now the window inside, windows tend to be a bit more on the grayish side. That's probably why I said I was getting black. Okay. So I am going to get a little bit, the tiniest hint of black. And you could even use some of the watered down gouache. So you're going to go with gray streaks, and see how it's too much. I'm going to use my finger and do that. I'm going to wash that off, and I'm going to use just a wet brush, and that's almost too much now. I'm going to take my TP and take that off as well. So you see, we want it just really pale, but glass tends to be on the gray side. And then I am going to use heavy white gouache and trim that. Trim the window, but first I'm going to do this side of the house, and I'm going to let that settle. Okay. So this side of the house, again with the brownish, I've got some gray on there already. I didn't clean my brush. I'm using some of the beige. I'm just filling in now. I might even fill in a little bit over here, because we might see a little hint of the house, but like on the left. Not too much though, because it's mostly straight on that we saw it. And I forgot to leave a spot for the window. So guess what I'm going to do? Now I'm actually going to wad up my TP and take a swath out. So it took a lot of that paint off, and I actually probably put a little pressure on there. So I think my TP kind of came off. So I just took a swath out, but then the white gouache will fill in, and there we go. Maybe I did that on purpose just to show you. So it's just a different window shape, and I've already got the grayish color in there, so I just took it off. So I'm going to go with the white gouache, the heavier part of it. I'm just washing my brush and then giving it a bit of a dry. So I'm going into the thicker part of this, even though I watered it down a bit. And I'm going to trim the windows. I'm just going to give a bit of a trim to the windows. I'm not looking for heavy white trim because the way the lighting was in the morning, and I'm going to make it face me so I don't go crooked again. Oh my gosh. Sorry, guys. But it's not overly white because it's the light of the morning, okay? I'll show you the dry one. There you go. And again, we don't want perfectly straight lines. I just need a little bit more of this heavier gouache here. I just kind of needed to get out. I could get some fresh, but okay. So I just need to get it a little bolder, but not too bold because it was early morning light. So the sun really wasn't up. It's kind of like twilight, but morning light, like morning twilight, because the light was still on in her vestibule. And we can even get a head start on the snow because that peak comes down a bit just to show you where the snow will go if you want. Okay? And that's good. That's good for the house. Okay, then we're going to do the trees in front. This one, I mean, obviously takes a little bit longer, but we're almost done. But first we want to do the landscape, then the trees will go in there easily. Okay, so this, just to give it a bit of contrast, I had it slightly more blue here, then a little bit more of the brown here. So I still have some of my blue. It wasn't 100% blue, okay? Not 100% blue. Very, very little pigment. Really, really light water. Okay, so I'm going to take this big brush again. Using the dirty water is fine, absolutely fine, 100% fine. And I'm going with my water. You can actually see where you're going with the water. So I'm just kind of floating a little bit of water here and there. I'm going to stand up again. I was sitting to do the house, but so see, I'm just kind of floating the water around. You can see because it's dirty water, so it's nice. I'm going to go into where it was slightly bluer. And I'm just going to hold my brush. See, I'm holding my brush like this, like on a 45-degree angle. And just kind of barely touching, kind of going right back there, kind of moving. See, I'm moving my brush back and forth, and every once in a while it touches. So see, I'm just kind of moving, teasing the paper a little, and then it touches. And then I leave, and I leave and go away somewhere else. Okay? So I'm leaving, going away, coming back. I ran out of the bluer one because remember my toilet paper sat in it. I have nice blue toilet paper to use for a guest to use in the bathroom. I'm so silly. Okay. So I wanted a hint more blue in there, especially for the foreground. That's why I did that. Just a hint. And go right off to the side. Don't forget your sides. And a little bit more down here. Very pale. Very pale. Okay? Very, very, very pale. Then I'm actually going to use my pretty watery, so there's some really watery gouache there. I'm actually going to put it on my palette. So I'm going to just kind of, that was the brush I was using for it, so it's not going to get too dirty. So I'm just going to sort of put some So this would kind of be white watercolor-ish because it's kind of milky. Okay, so this is just going to go in the landscape. White watercolor is really translucent, and if you want to water down with gouache, you're going to get the same effect. I don't want to waste it, so I'm just going to just empty my brush there. So what this does is, I'm going to use the big brush again. What this does is it softens the landscape into the paper. Okay, so sometimes you'll see that a lot of watercolor artists will leave the paper. I do too sometimes. However, when I'm doing a landscape, I like to kind of bring it together. So kind of in the in-between parts, I'm using, see, I've got a lot of gouache on there, and it's just kind of, again, doing the same thing. I'm not 100% kind of covering it, but it's just kind of giving it a little bit of a softer blend into the paper. I'm not so worried about over here in the corner, but I didn't get enough pigment here because that tree is going to be there, but not right to the corner. So that little bit of white, waterier white, we're going to put the heavier gouache in too, okay? I'm going to do this painting, this part, this shrub, then I'm going to put the heavy gouache on, then this painting is going to go last, okay? I'm going to put the heavy gouache on the roof and in front, and then this one last, because this has a lot of heavy gouache in it. You can actually see the texture of the gouache because there's talc in the gouache. You can actually let it autofocus. Might not autofocus on the white. And then I put a little extra blue in the gouache, like just the straight up blue, because then it looked more snowy. So in the foreground, the snow might have more blue in it. So what we're going to do is I'll get some more blue because remember my toilet paper mopped it all up. And I've only put a tiny bit more in for the landscape. Okay, so that made a nice soft landscape. There's just these are shadows in the snow. We're not always trying to look for straight, snow coverage, right? Because there's a lot of soft shadows in the snow. And so here, notice that these look like little globs with a concentrated globs near the bottom because the snow is accumulating here and it's really dark here. Underneath, more shadow as well. So I might even use this big brush. Okay, so I'm going to go into my heavy pigment load and I'm really loading it. I'm pretty much using up a lot of this stuff going on here, just kind of loading it up. I might have to replenish because I always do examples. And you're going to, so this comes out, the bottom of it comes out almost to the doorway. So we want to give ourselves a little guidelines, okay? So it comes out to there and it kind of goes across. So I'm using the corner of my brush and I'm wiggling it because we're only seeing a little bit through the snow, okay? And then and then we see so I see I'm just moving my brush, kind of like tilting, and then every once in a while making contact. So it's like globs, and it's going up, and we're leaving space for snow, thinking this is snow. We're like reverse engineering our snow. And then we're going to have more snow clumping up in front on the top. But it's like you're seeing little bits of the shrub on the left. And already from a distance, it looks like snow because we left it blank, right? But we're going to use that gouache. Now we're going to switch over to the heavy gouache, and I'll show you. And I'm going to put that brush in water. Well, no, I'm just going to wash it out. I don't need to put it in water. I tend to like to wash my gouache out first because it dries really hard. It comes out with soap and hot water. Just tap water is fine. I want to get a little bit more of my cobalt. barely any. I don't need much at all. And I'm going to take my gouache right from the tube now. So I typically put it in here because I can't keep it clean. Otherwise, I put it somewhere else. And then I let it all dry up together in a nice glob. I kind of turn it on its side and let it dry. And so I can get, like, I'll put my fresh glob here. So this is gouache. It's by PBO. It's 100 mils as opposed to buying white watercolor, which is really translucent. This is like titanium white. It'll cover everything. It's like chalk on a chalkboard, right? Black chalkboard, white chalk covers it. You can actually see the teacher's writing. And again, they have gum Arabic to soften it out. Sometimes you get little flecks. I'll save those too and just stick them like at the top, and I'll just put that in there and let it soften into it. So I'm going to put that over to the side of my glob. Oh, I forgot to leave it upside down because it's pretty thick stuff. So comes out like thick like toothpaste. So you see? And it'll stay mounded up. It's only about $15 to $20 maximum. If you were to try and buy, like, you get one white tube and a tiny tube in a set, and it's so tiny, and you know, you want to, I rarely use other gouache. Gouache is like, some people love to paint in gouache. I don't use it unless I'm doing if I have a lot of yellow in a watercolor painting, the one I did for Ukraine, then I'll do that. But so I'm going to use this 10, and you can actually see, whoops, where did it go? There's the wad. Looks like white poop. And I'm going to put it on fairly thick. See, I'm scooping it kind of thing. I'm not dipping. I'm kind of doing a little scoop, and starting from the top up here, and I'm laying it on thick, scooping more. Okay, I want to lay it on a bit thick. Gouache can be rather sticky, so make sure it's 100% dry before it touches anything. And then I'm going to take the tiniest, as I go, I just have the tiniest bit of cobalt on the tip of my brush, because we don't want to blend it. We just want to every once in a while see a little shadow of blue. Okay, and grab more gouache, especially to the outside. I'm almost laying my brush down. Sometimes I'm literally rolling my brush off. I'm rolling it off. Like if you had a flat brush, you can see it roll better. Like I'll roll it off because I kind of had scooped it. And I'm going all in between those globs, making sure to get extra on the edge because that's where the snow accumulates. And here, and getting that tiny hint of blue. It's barely anything on the tip of my brush, and we're kind of rolling that in there too. But you don't want a lot of it. Okay, the blue is just like a shadow in the snow as opposed to a blue snow. And you're kind of going in between your globs, touch your globs. You can go over some of the globs for sure. Snow. And like I presume, and I kind of know because I know snow, being from Canada, this would have been sticky snow because it would have been milder in Georgia and it melted off pretty soon. So it would be sticking to everything. Okay. And getting more whatever left over that blue that I had. And then I'm going to add more shadow under here. As you can tell, there's more shadow here. Make sure your shadow touches your shrub. People leave space. It's like, nope. Your shadow touches you. You know, when you're out on a nice sunny day and you see your shadow is touching your feet. It's not skipping and then going somewhere else, right? So now we're going to do this under the house, okay? So I'm actually going to hold my brush almost flat to the house. I'm going to go right in front of that tree, and I'm going to roll it toward the, I'm rolling my brush toward, see, I'm rolling in my fingers toward the house. See, so it's creating this, and I want to go right over that tree. And then from the bottom of my gouache, I can just sort of do like little wiggles near the bottom to let it kind of blend in. Okay, so I'm rolling toward the front. So Rhonda can't get out of her house now. I remember in the winter of 1970 in Ottawa, Ontario, we lived on the air base there. My dad was in the Air Force, so he was a flight engineer. And we had record snowfall that year. We actually had certificates of survival. I still have it. And I was 7 years old. We'd wake up in the morning and we would have to dig. The way the drifting was and everything else, it was like unreal. A lot of people died that year, but it was a 2-story house. I could look out. I could probably have climbed out my window onto the snow, except I would have fallen into the snow. So we would get out the back door and dig out the front door. And when the plow would go by, my parents would have to climb onto the snowbank when the plow would go by and then start shoveling from the top. Like, it was crazy. Absolutely. And a lot of people died. Like, yeah, it was just nuts. But I remember crawling home from school one day because I was I was short too. And if you crawl and you spread out your, there was one part where it wasn't on the road. We had to go through a park on a little trail, on a little sidewalk. And we had to, it seemed like such a long distance when you're a kid. Everything seems so much big, like so long and huge. And I remember crawling on my hands and knees because we kept sinking into the drifts if we tried to walk. So we had, like, the last leg of our journey just before going through that park, we had to go down. So sometimes when the gouache gets too thick and it's looking a little bit mucky, like sort of like that, you just want to take a little water, and just kind of let it blend into, just wiggle the brush back and forth, let it blend into that background a little from underneath. Okay. So who's going to go volunteer to dig Rhonda out of her house? Now, I'm going to do that. We're going to do the other shrub in front. And I must have touched something with I mucked that up. Don't do that. So I want to get rid of the excess gouache. So I can even do like a little bit. I can just empty my brush there. And I'm going to just wash it off a little bit because then I want to go in and get those shadows going. And like right here, I just want to get a little bit of shadow kind of touching there, just a little bit deeper. You could even use your finger touching, kind of still some snow is there. And kind of mucking with your finger. It's not solid shadow. Okay, and we can get a little bit of the gouache in there in the corner. If you went too far into the corner, because we still want some snow there, like I did. If you went too far, just wash your brush a little, dip back in your gouache, and bring some more gouache into the foreground. Go right across. There we go. Now this cute little tree, pretty concentrated pigment. You can use like blue-brown again. Not so much snow accumulated on that one. And then don't let me forget to do this tree coming in off to the side. And because this one's a bit lower down, I'm going to sit and Got my thumbprint in there. If I send this to Georgia, I can't commit a crime down there because they'll have my fingerprints. Well, I don't know how well the gouache holds the fingerprint. So this tree, I'm just turning it ever so slightly. It kind of comes up in front of the window, but then it kind of comes up and then it kind of curves down. So it's kind of more of an interesting tree as opposed to just going up straight. And it has lots of little, it maybe has 3 main trunks kind of coming up, and it's slightly to the right of the house, like where it originates and kind of in the middle of the landscape. So we have like 3 main trunks coming up, right? And then this one is going to go up like that. Okay. If it's not flowing, I need water. So you see if it's like a little bit granular looking, it means it's not, you need a little bit more water in your paint to make it flow. But we don't want this too watery. And remember, this is wiggly and it goes right in front of the window. And, oh, I forgot to do the gouache on the roof yet. But we still have that other one. Don't let me forget the roof. Remind me. And here we go. I could even bring a little hint of that black if I had the little bit of black in this one. The shadows are stronger as we go away from the light. And I'm just sort of sweeping through. Notice my brush. The handle is, now I'm trying to stay away from going in front of you, but my handle is leading. And this kind of leans down. And just wiggle your brush as you're going, barely touching. So just the tip is kind of barely touching, and it kind of moves over. I forget what kind of tree this one is, or a shrub. And it's pretty heavy foliage up here. It kind of goes a little bit in front of that other tree. So that's why we want this nice and creamy, so it's a contrast, the creamy. That's why you could also add a tiny bit of the black in there. We do want these trunks, like they're kind of like little trunks, but we want them a little bit thicker near the base. And then we have some kind of going off to the edge here. There. And we can muck that up in front. Oh yeah, like forsythia, okay. We want to muck that up in front with a little bit of white gouache in front of it, okay? So, and then we have that little branch coming off to the right. And I'm going to take a little bit of water, and just with what's on my brush, I'm going to just move this in front. That's why I got that thing there, because I've got my brush there. So this branch kind of comes this way and goes right over, because it's big. And I can kind of put a little more pressure on my brush for one of the branches. And some kind of comes that way, right off the top, coming off. And kind of like more branches coming off the main branch, wiggling, barely touching, so that just the tip of my brush is touching, very little pressure, and kind of going like that. Okay. And the gouache. So, washing my brush because I want to keep my gouache a little bit on the clean side. And I'm going to get some gouache on top of this branch because it's going straight out. It's going to have an accumulation of snow. Okay, on the top of the branch. Might go on some of the other ones. You could even take that tiny bit of like going right over top, so it makes it look different from the ones in the background as well. You could also take a little bit of that tiny, tiny bit of blue and touch it in there too. Because in the foreground, you'll see differences in the shadows because if a tree is really big, it means it's in the foreground. So it might be coming off the page. So you're going to see little differences in the shadows of the snow in the foreground. And then we want to get a little bit of snow right in front of that forsythia. So I'm just kind of flattening my brush in front here. We could even see a little shadow from that forsythia kind of. I'm going to just wiggle away like a shadow. Who knows? Might not have too much of a shadow. And then the roof. Gosh, don't forget the roof. With quite a lot of the gouache. And again, because the roof is a little further back, we don't want it perfectly white. We want to cover any outlines that we have. Absolutely any outlines. We don't want to see that. And because snow isn't straight, we can kind of roll it into up there. And you see I've got a little bit of that tan color on my brush. As I engage the belly, it's fine. And I'm going to roll it toward the overhang and kind of wiggle my brush a little so it's not straight. We don't want anything like snow kind of goes clumpy because this is packy snow. This is snowman making snow. I'm surprised Rhonda didn't go out and make a nice snowman here. And then over here, I'm going to make sure, so we don't want any sharp edges with that accumulation of snow. And a little bit of snow kind of went on the peak as well. And the peak continues down close to that window. It's just a really pretty kind of little design. And so I'm going to go along the peak a little bit. Not a lot accumulates on the peak so much, but a little bit does. That's why in Switzerland they have peaked houses so that the weight of the snow doesn't cave in the roof. We have that a lot in like northern Quebec too. They have kind of like chalet style houses like that because they get a lot of snow there too. And you see how that snow comes down. There's a gob of gouache there, which I need to go away. I want that to go away. I don't want that gob of gouache, so I'm using my nail and pushing it back, which worked. That worked. Because gouache is thick. Just going to take a little bit of that sepia-ish color and put that under there. And there we go. A little bit of shadow in that roof is fine. You know, it's not 100% perfectly white. And you could even, just like maybe it's drifting a bit, going right in front of that snow. Don't want too much blue, and I don't want it to look like just a pale white blue. Want to get a bit more over here. I'm just kind of rolling my brush in the corner and kind of rolling it away. There we go. Well, that's it. This one took a little longer, but I like to take my time with that. So sometimes they take me 2 hours with the watercolor because I like to show lots of examples. And then maybe this is a little bit on the straight side, but maybe I'll send this one to Rhonda since it is her house. So, and Oh my. I just need a sip of water here. And there we go. Beautiful. You hope. Yeah. Well, if I like it when it dries, but then I do have to put in that chimney. I want to make sure to put the chimney in for you, Rhonda. I just didn't, I simplified it. And that's taking artistic license. It still looks crooked, but then I'm looking at it now from another angle, so the door looks crooked. Few hard work, yes. Yeah, but, you know, slow and steady wins a race. And, yeah, so I might add in a bit more shrubberies and everything else, but it looks great. It's fabulous. I just fell in love with it when she took that photo. I've often done paintings from photos. Not often, but sometimes. We lost a few viewers, but I know everybody knows that I saved it. So there we go. And I will edit eventually and put them into just videos and edit the beginning and end, you know, when I'm just yakking. Okay. All right. Toodaloo and farewell and all that jazz.